really important. See this now? See the difference? This would not put down enough mud because it doesn't even reach the bottom of the tile. So whenever you get your tile, when you're buying your tool, you want to make sure that you have the efficient tool. So it doesn't do you any good to use this trowel against this because you're not going to have enough mortar bed. Okay. Then you have...
different on the D, different on the square.
Yeah, typically this V notch is used for your mosaics on the wall, the little mosaic tile. Pretty easy.
Oh,
See how thin that is?
yeah. Oh, okay.
You don't need much because it has a webbing on the back, so the webbing will stick to it. If you have a thicker tile and you want to keep it flush, you don't want to use that much thin set because you want to make them even. You have to use a little less. This is a little bit more for decorating. If you want to put a little mosaic dot or something, you just want to smear just enough on there. Okay, so we also have this super duper guy. Alright, this guy here, tap in. Why? Because when you go to fit to travertine flooring, you really need to have a significant amount of mortar bed in order for it to set. The reason why they call it thin set is because you want to set the tile in a bed of mortar. So when you press it down, it should compress down the thickness of this should compress down to half. So that's when you know you got a good mortar bed. Along with that, you want to make sure that you skim every tile. And I'm going to show you this when I do my actual demonstration, but you want to make sure that you put a significant bond coat. What they call bond coat is a smear. The reason why you smear it is because porcelain are designed not for anything to stick to it. That's what they sell it for. Because when you're in the kitchen and you spill coffee, you don't want it to stick to the surface. Okay? So at the same time, when you go to bond it, it still is not designed to stick. So what you have to do is properly install it in order for it to bond. But at the same time, it doesn't nothing to penetrate the surface, and I'll show you that in a little bit. So now what we have, recapping just a little bit, we have the right size notch for the right thickness of tile. So you want to make sure that when you purchase your trowel, that you purchase the right size for the towel. You weren't here when we first came in, and what that is when you buy a trowel, it should be the same thickness of the tile. Okay. If you buy something smaller and you use the wrong size trowel, it won't put enough mortar on the floor. So there's a good chance that it could come up. So you want to make sure that you do that. So I think we've covered the tools that you need, the buckets, trowels, everything like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate layout. The layout is important. Some people say, well, can't you just start in the middle of the floor and work your way out? And that's not quite proper layout. Why? Because we're visual people. And visually, we want to see full tiles in the front, cut to the back. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that when you're doing your layout, that you go from where you're going to see first, and you run all your layout marks from that point, right? Especially if it's in the door. Front door, entryway doors, you can do it floor tiles and doorway. You want to make sure when you walk in the door, you see a full tile. Now, what we do in the trade is we create something called a story pole. Anybody know what a story pole is? Okay, I'm going to demonstrate a story pole. Now, a lot of the times you see guys on television and they have everything laid out and it looks like they're really smart and you go, man, how did you do that fast? Well, old school way is to create a story pole. So if you want to make sure that you know exactly where you're going to be when you do your layout, you create a story pole. The way you do it is take several tiles, lay them out in the garage, put a long line of them in the garage, or in a flat surface. And it's that, usually what I do is I'll set 10 or 11 of them. And I have set all my spacers dry. It's called dry bonding. Okay. And on your tape, you create your story pole. A lot of people are not going to tell you this trick. This trick will keep you from screwing up every time. And what you do is you take a few minutes and you just mark your line. Alright? And then take a look, it takes a couple minutes, but this prevents you from making any mistakes. So what you can do is you can take the full, if you got a 30-foot tape, if you got a 50-foot tape, no matter what size tape you have, you can just keep going. You put it back on the same mark, your bond mark, and then you remark again. Now a lot of times we use what they call grease pencil, so it doesn't erase. But just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to do this. This is a trick of the trade that you never go wrong if you use this trick. Now, there's probably some of you who are really good at math, and you could probably figure this out mathematically. Now, that means that no matter where I'm at, if I drag this piece right here, and I set this down, I can tell you right now, I got less than a 1-inch piece right there. Why? Because I'm using my line, right? But what that'll do is that gives me an opportunity to go, you know what? I'd rather have a 6-inch cut. So you just say this is your mark here, right? You can place it on here, wherever you want it. You can pull it back to about 6 inches. There's your mark right there. So now I know, without putting any thin set down, without changing anything, I know, because I have a full piece there that's going to give me a cut here, cut here. Why? Because if I take this and lay it back on my line where I had it before, put that on that mark, it lands on that mark, put this on this one, right back on my mark, I'm exactly. So I can take this and I can string it out as far as I want to go, and I can turn around and go, okay, if this is my cut, I can drag it over here. If this is my wall, there's my full tile right there. If I want to go to the next line, there's my full tile, I got a 3-inch cut. Does that make sense? So that's a quick way of laying anything out. Now, if you want to go on a 45-degree angle, you do the same thing. Put the tile up on a 45. Put them up on a 45-degree angle. Make sure you set all your spacers first. Right? You do the same thing, only difference is you're going to pull it this way. Right? So then you do the same exact mark. You make the same mark all the way down as far as you want to go. So if you're in your entryway, you pull your tape, you make your mark, you know exactly where your cut's going to be. So you don't have to guess, ever. And then when you need if you want to square it up, you can start from center, and you can work your way out, and you know where your cut's going to be, and you're not guessing. What happens is sometimes you say, well, I'll start at the center, and I'll just keep going, and you get to where your wall is, you got a little sliver. You want to do that with the story pole, dry bond, before you ever mix any thin sets. Okay? So now, we're going to talk about layout, and I'm going to mix up some thin sets. I'm going to show you about the consistency of thin sets. So we already talked about the tile, the size of your trowel, and how that plays in your layout. So now I'm going to do a quick layout right now. We got 30. The best way is to check yourself to do a 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10. Does anybody know what that is? If you're doing a large floor, I'm just going to put this in the square. Okay. So what we do when we're laying out a larger floor, if you're doing a bigger floor, we do what they call 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10. That's square. Okay, so from your ruler, if it's 3 foot, you make your mark. By 4 foot, you make your mark. From there to there, 5 feet. Now what we do is we burn what we call burn an inch. So when you burn an inch, you just add the inch back on. You know what that means? What happens is when you use the tip of the measuring tape, sometimes it bends. You're not getting an accurate measurement. So what we do is we burn 1 inch. So we'll go 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1. The reason why is because it takes more. So now we got square. Okay, so this is 3 feet. So what's going to happen is when you do your layout, once again, you're not going to necessarily start from the middle, but just because we have this little small piece, I'm going to trowel. Where am I at? Oh, 12.4. So now on a smaller project like this, you would use a square. On the larger floors, you would use the 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10. You take your square, double check yourself, and as you can see, your square. Now I'm going to go ahead and run the line all the way through because I'm going to show you something with a 45-degree pattern versus then I'm going to mix up some thin set and make some speed. Do you have any questions?
Are you using marble for masking on the wall?
Absolutely. Porcelain tiles. Now, would you guys like to see a straight pattern layer, or would you like to see a 45 degree? 45?
Just a mouth of it or 45 now?
45, so I'm going to show you this, I'm going to show you the 45. Come on, you go. So, now what we're going to do is we're going to show you thin set. This is big. Because the right consistency of thin set is where it's really big. When you use fiber rock, hardy backer, any pre-made cement board, it's really important to wet this down. The reason why is because this is dry and it will suck the water right out of it.
Right.
So the best way to do it, the way we do it in the field, is we just get a light sponge. And we just kind of wipe it down, get all the dust off of it. But it creates a little bit of a moisture. So when you apply your thin set, the fiber rock is not just pulling all the moisture out of it. A lot of people don't know that. When you're dealing with porcelain tiles and you're dealing with a dry surface, that's what causes bond issues. Because the porcelain is already a tough thing to bond to. That's why you have to use a bond coat. And if it dries too fast, it will break the bond in the drying process. And the reason why I say that is because the slower the thin set cures, the more bonding strength you have. The faster it goes, that's why when I'm going to show you in whipping this up, you see a lot of guys drilling. They just take a drill paddle and drill and drill and whip and whip and whip. The longer you whip it, the less strength it has. You should whip it for like 2-3 minutes, let it slag, whip it one more time, and then that's when it's ready to go. If you whip it, it's creating air, and air is what causes it to dry out. So just bear that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and put a little more sun on the light.
So it doesn't matter if you're doing a wall or a floor, you use the same bag of inset?
I like to, simply because the ones that we use has the polymers in it, and that's what you want, especially with porcelain. If it doesn't have an additive in it, do not use it with porcelain because it won't bond. Polymers, it's an additive. It's usually acrylic. And you'll see when you go to purchase, you'll go and you'll see some that's $15 a bag, $12 a bag, $20 a bag, $26 a bag. All of them have significant reasons why they're more expensive, and that's because the additives that they put on is for bonding strength. Okay. Some, like I give you for instance, Mexican pavers or saltillo. They have a different type of, they're a clay tile. So you could use regular thin set, a little acrylic additive in it, and it will bond. And it's tough to get them off. With your travertine, very porous material, see how it has a lot of holes in it? You don't have to have the same bonding strength. When you get into these porcelains and the glass mosaics, that's when you really need to use the best product out there because they have the ingredients in there that will create the bond that you need. Okay?
So that bag's of floor mortar, if we're doing the bathroom wall, would we say wall mortar or something?
For the homeowners, yes. Because they know, and they kind of, for you to walk into a store and not know, they kind of tag it so it's easier for you to select. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to mix a small batch of thin set. So I'm just going to put a couple squeezes of water in with the sponge, and as you can see, it's not a lot of water. If you want a full bucket, you'd have to fill this up about 3/4 of the way to get a full bucket. We're not going to need that much, just for the sake of time. It'll get a little bit dusty, but I'm going to keep it as good enough. I'm going to take some of this water out. I don't know how much it's going to take. I'm just going to take a little bit out. We can always add water back. If you go the other way and you run out this, you don't need it. Okay. Alright. Just gotta hold your breath just a little bit. Alright, so what this is gonna do is you're going to mix a good consistency, a little thicker than pancake mix. Does anybody know how to make pancakes?
Oh yeah.
You know how to make pancakes, you can make some thin sets, right? Okay, it's really important that you let it flat in the bucket. What that means is, after you whip it up for about a couple minutes and you see like most of the little chunks are out of it, when you have a mixer, you won't have any chunks at all. It'll be a nice smooth texture, right? But what happens is, if you read the bag, and a lot of people don't do it, but it's important that you let it sit in the bucket after you've whipped it up. It's important for you to let it sit for at least 5 to 7 minutes. The reason why that is because once it starts drying, it shrinks. So a lot of times people go, hey, you know what? I laid a good floor, came back the next day, and I had all this whoop-de-doo. But I put a level on it, and I'm sure it was flat. What's happening is it's shrinking. So what happens when it shrinks is pulling the tiles down. So make sure you let it shrink in the bucket. It won't shrink again once you put it on. So once you make them level after that, it will stay that way. Right, I'm almost done. Just make sure this is consistent. Now, one of the ways you know that it's consistent and the way you know it's ready for application is when you put it on your trowel. The trowel's going to tell you if it's dripping off your trowel, it's too wet. You're almost there. Now, especially when you're dealing with this type of product, you want to leave a little more water in it because it dries it out faster, right? Well, one of the ways that we test is if it runs like super fast, you should be able to control this without it dripping all over everything. That's the one way you know. So when you're ready to do your application, it's moving, but it's not moving so fast that I can't keep track of it. Alright, so I would say that's a good, now just for the sake of time, I'm not going to let it sit for 5 minutes. So one of the things that you have to do when you're working on your floor is not trowel over your line. Your line is your Bible. It's how your floor is going to turn out. So what you want to do is you want to stop short of your line and drag it out. Right? Now when you get to a corner, what happens is these corners are the most vulnerable. And when you trowel, if you don't put those corners on, that's when you roll the refrigerator over it, it's going to crack right there. So what we do, and I'm going to do this in two separate, I'm going to do 45, I'm going to do this too. So what we do in the field is we butter that corner. That way, when we put it down, that corner is filled now. And we set it. Now, what you want to do is you want to rock it back and forth. Now, you know we talked about earlier how the thickness of the trowel needs to be the same thickness of the tile. The reason why now you can see how it's set in the bed of mortar. Okay? I'm going to move this and do the 45 because that's what we're doing.
Step on it?
Not till it's dry. It'll move. It'll move. But usually what you can do is you either tap on it, you shake it, and what that does is it sets it in the inside. I'm going to pull this up because we said we're going to do a... Now see, that's a pretty good bond. Almost 100%. Now, the way you want to get 100% bond is this how you do it. And with porcelain tile, it's really important. The closer you get to 100% bond, the more chances of it never coming off the floor. So I'm going to show you this. Alright? And then we do what we call back butter. And this is what they call a bond coat. Now people say, why do you need to do that? Because this will guarantee the 100% bond. Right? Now when I set this, same process. When I pull it up, it's going to be 100% covered. When you have a complete bond covered on the tile, then you know that you have a good set. So I'm going to pull this back up and you'll see what I mean. Bonding. Why? Because I put a bond coat. Now you know it's not going to come up. So the consistency of the thin set, the proper tool, you got a good bond. Okay, so now I'm going to do the 45 because you want to see.
So when you're doing like a shower wall or something, do you make these lines on your wall and you start in the middle?